Welcome to We Are Everyone, a video and podcast series powered by Pivotal Moments, and we focus on the intersection of mental wellness in the workforce. We bring together young professionals and mindful executive mentors to bridge the generational gap and bring to the surface conversations about the importance of mental wellness and how to overcome career tradition challenges. Mental wellness is paramount. Join us. Welcome to We Are Everyone / Mental Recess. I am your host, Jen Sherman, and we have a very special guest on today. We have Tom Power. He's the president and CEO owner at Sunshine Minting. So welcome, Tom. How are you today?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. So I guess just in general, we always like to start by asking our guests, a little bit about yourself and introducing yourself, just to kind of tell the audience who you are and what you have accomplished.
Sure. So again, Tom Power, I'm the CEO of Sunshine Minting. So Sunshine Minting is the world's largest private supplier of silver and gold products into the minting industry. And what that means is that we supply products to government mints, such as the US Mint, other governments around the world, marketing companies, private companies, financial institutions, really just whoever's looking for anything silver and gold and platinum in the world, we provide that products. The company's been around since 1979. I got involved in 1997 and then ended up acquiring the company in 2007 from the former owner of the company. And that's really when we hit our growth trajectory as a company, and kind of launched ourselves in the international business as opposed to being a local regional supplier of products. We've had a year-on-year growth history, always bumps along the way. I said, managing a company is like flying an airplane. You know where you want to go, but you've always got to make adjustments, depending on which way the wind is blowing. And so I think as a company, we've been very successful in that. And now we're kind of into our next phase of our growth, where we're moving into Henderson, Nevada, moving out of Idaho, trying to realign the company for the next 10 years and see where we go from there.
Well, that's awesome. And I think, frankly, as being a part of the digital transformation, really going back to the materials that we need in our just ecosystem, and that will just never go away, right? Like, we can definitely have all of our minting NFTs, but we're definitely going to be needing the actuality of these materials, because that is, we live in a world that is tangible, not an intangible world.
Well, I think what a lot of people fail to realize is that everything that we touch today has some element of precious metals in it. Your iPhone, your cell phone. I mean, every cell phone has got probably $10 to $20 worth of gold and silver in the processing. Computers, the new green technology, solar panels, water treatment facilities for evolving countries and things like that, all have an element of precious metals. Plus, it's still one of the best stored elements of value that people can possess. Right. As you said, a lot of it's in the digital realm. This is still in the physical realm.
Exactly. But it's also really cool to see how the physical and the digital realm come together. Right.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Really interesting. So I guess kind of, what led you to Sunshine Minting? I know we've had some of this discussion previously on our intro call, but I would love to kind of share that journey with the audience, because you think it's really interesting.
Yeah, I was working as a middle manager in a very large precious metals company up just outside of Toronto, Canada. We were one of the first Canadian companies to get a federal contract with the U.S. government back in 1992 under NAFTA, when the whole first North American Free Trade Agreement came in. So we were given the contract to supply gold and silver products to the U.S. government from Canada. It was very controversial at the time. Got tons of hate mail from different senators and things like that. But because this whole free trade was so new to everybody, it was also very troubling to people. So that lasted a number of years until I think it was around 96. Corporate decided to exit the physical fabricated products business, focus in on some of their older core businesses. So we were then given this challenge. We had a contract with the US government, and they basically said, hey, we come to an agreement. You help us find another supplier that can take your place. And, over a period of time, we'll work you out of the agreement. So that's how I got to know Sunshine Minting. I came down here the first time to Idaho in, I think it was spring break of '97. And, loved what I saw, not just from the environment, but the company. It was a great, little company struggling to do the right thing. I just felt, just a great sense of involvement from the employees. And the owner was looking for some real management strength that he didn't have in the company. So long story short, I was able to go back to Canada, got my visa. And by the end of May of '97, I had relocated down to Idaho. And shortly after that, my family followed. It was interesting times because shortly after I moved down, the owner took ill and ended up passing away 6 months later. By the end of that year, he was diagnosed with an inoperable brain tumor. You think back in '97, the technology wasn't quite the same as it is today. So it just was not a survivable tumor that he had. So it was a challenging time. It was an exciting time. I learned more probably in that first 12 months than I think I've ever learned about managing a business. I'd been a manager, but I was never responsible for payroll. Now all of a sudden I got to be the guy to sign the checks for payroll. That's a whole different level of responsibility.
100%. I just think, sometimes the best way to learn things is to just actually have to learn it, right? And put yourself in this scenario. I think, there's business school and all these degrees and all that jazz, but sometimes I think the best way of learning is just actually being thrown into a situation and having to do it.
You can read all you want, but when it all of a sudden you have to be the one sitting there at night in bed thinking, am I doing the right thing? Am I making the right decision? And we can talk about that a little bit later, but it's just, and now all of a sudden you're tugging at your heartstrings, and it's a different set of responsibilities. That's for sure.
100%. So I think that actually kind of goes into our topic of discussion around, what we talk about here at Pivotal Moments, and particularly with Mental Recess and the We Are Everyone channel, is mental wellness, mental strength, mental fitness, however you want to call that. There's always, it's a continuum, and in the workforce, right? But again, going back to leaders, and it's not just leaders, of course, there's employees, but here we're talking a little bit more about leadership, given your position. And so we talk a lot about mental fitness and mental strength. And I'm curious, given kind of your journey and how you've evolved and adapted and have had a lot of, and continue to do have a lot of weight on your shoulders, what is, how would you define mental fitness, mental strength?
Oh, that's a tough one. I really think, for me, mental, it's not just mental strength. It comes down to, I use the term mental toughness, but without the machismo, the tone of toughness. It's really having the confidence in yourself to know that the decisions that you're making, you go in armed with the best information that you have at the time. You're not going to have 100% information. You're not going to have 100%, but try to get as much of the big picture as you can to help you make those decisions, and then feel confident in those decisions. You're always going to make mistakes. And that's the other side of it too, is to be mentally prepared to deal with making mistakes. And you know what? Making mistakes is okay. It's part of growth. It's part of learning. As we all say growing up as kids, every once in a while you got to stick your finger in the socket to know, I don't do that again.
Yep. Oh, that hurts. Nope, that's not.
That's not the right thing to do. But that's exactly, as adults, we still have to continue use that continuum as to say, you're going to stick your finger in the socket every once in a while. You live it, you learn from it, you move on and recollect yourself. So as a CEO, that was probably my biggest challenge too, was just even myself growing that mental strength, that mental toughness.
Yeah, I liked how you said mental toughness, but without like the mojo of toughness, because I think that's one of the things that when we're talking about wellness and just everyone's mental state right now, since that is a topic that has risen to the surface, well, it always has mattered, but I think now we talk about it more, is toughness is not necessarily like, it I think that there's a lot of empathy and toughness too. It's not like that other definition. But something else you said is confidence. And another thing that a book can't teach, or even me or you or you, we, or as a people, you can never teach confidence. Confidence comes from within. Confidence comes from making those mistakes, all of those things to build you up. And I think like I think running businesses, and I know that we can't all be business owners and entrepreneurs because I don't think that would help. Not help. I don't think that would work with our current economy or ecosystem. Having said that, I think the best way to really build confidence or get to know yourself and building that mental toughness, if you will, is throwing yourself to own a business. I mean, I think that's you really just learn everything, and putting your fingers, as you said, in sockets, that as an analogy, like all the time, you're like, oh, nope, let's try the next door, So
I must say, the company that I worked for up in Canada, one of the things, and I tell people all the time that I really enjoyed about this company, is they allowed me to develop myself as what we call an intrapreneur. So it's an entrepreneur, but you're working within a company. So you're managing an area, but you have the benefit of spending other people's money, right? So it's, there's still the risk and mistakes and things like that, but it's I say a softer learning curve than, if it's actually your own company. But that really helped set me up, with the confidence as I approach this opportunity with Sunshine. Just being able to learn, and it's good to work with a company that allows you to make those, I call them managed mistakes. You're not going to put the company's well-being at risk, but you can afford to make these small mistakes as you go to learn from it. And that's one of the things that we try to do with Sunshine, is allow people the opportunity to have these managed mistakes so that they can grow and develop as well too.
I love that, manage mistakes. It's okay to make them, but they're manageable. And they're probably, the end result will actually lead to more innovation. So I love that. And I guess if we kind of go into, because this was definitely something that I wanted to cover per our previous conversations. I know we're kind of jumping around to your topics, but kind of given this role and where we are right now, I've been having a lot of conversations as well around the 4 generations in the workforce. And I think that there's been a shift in, a couple of years ago, it was all about the millennials, right? And then millennials are now kind of becoming managers, and maybe they've learned a little bit more and gotten their butts kicked of just how to adapt, right? Like adapt, and also on all sides, right? Everyone's adapting. But I'm kind of curious, is how have you, what are you kind of seeing right now with the current workforce? And, thinking also about like your definition as well of what mental fitness, mental toughness is, and seeing that as we do have like these 4 different generations right now operating in our workforce.
Yeah, it's an interesting time having the 4 generations, because you have basically 4 different value systems that are at play in your workforce. For me, the biggest challenge with having these 4 different workforces is that how to manage that. We've had to evolve as a leadership team, and when I say leadership team, I don't mean the senior executives, the management, everybody in a role. Maybe you're just the leader of your work cell. The old Theory X management style is gone. It's long gone. What we focus in now is developing people with a high level of what we call EQ, emotional intelligence, because that's the only way that, as you said, that you can be a little bit empathetic to the people you're working with. You've got a baby boomer beside you and you got a millennial beside you, 2 totally different ends of the spectrum as to what motivates them, what their values are. The old baby boomers probably on the they're looking forward to retirement at this point, or closing in on retirement. They just want to come to work, do their job, get paid, go home. They don't want, anything. Where the millennials now are looking for involvement, from some social awareness. They're looking for different things. They want to feel good about what they're doing at work. And so it's how you manage in between those is become a big challenge. That's one of the big cultural things that we're trying to promote within our companies, how to create this emotional intelligence to be able to deal with this broad spectrum of employees, which is it's a huge challenge.
Yeah, and I actually had this really long discussion yesterday. I got a little like, not, I mean, these are all good discussions to have. I had my partner's niece came over and we were talking about this, like about the job, right? And about like also navigating different employees and different employees' strengths, weaknesses, all that jazz. And, you know, I'm a very passionate person. I'm a millennial. I believe in social impact. You know, I always was like resisting my millennialism a couple years ago. And now I'm like, wait, I am totally a millennial. So, and you know, that's just, and this whole aspect of passion, right? So loving, you know, if I worked for you, Tom, right? And it's not my company, but it's your company, but I share the same passion as you. But at the end of the day, I love my job, right? And you have to, I think coming to work and loving what you do every day makes a huge difference in your like happiness, your mental health state, because that is 40 or 50% of more than that of what you spend your time on for the most part, which is crazy to me as you think about it, of like, this is what you're doing for the most part of your life. So you should really love what you're doing. And with the 4 different generations and how different they are, it's kind of, I'm sure it's difficult to create this environment workforce that this way all these different types of people can show up and really love what they're doing and be happy.
Yeah, no, it's huge. There's a whole new sense of self-fulfillment and involvement that you've got to instill in employees, that, you know, it doesn't matter if they're doing the most menial task in the operation. They have to feel good about what's going on, and what their contribution is to, you know, whether it's the greater good or things. And that's what I say. You know, I think back, gosh, when I first jumped in the workforce, it was like basically shut up, show up, and keep up. You know, it's but that's not the case anymore. You know, and now we engage our team leaders, our supervisors, our managers to constantly engage with the employees. How's it going? You know, is there any challenges you're facing today? What can I do to help? It's that sort of thing, and make them feel that they're truly a part of the process, as opposed to just being a cog in the wheel, which just doesn't fly anymore. Again, there's maybe the old generation that it's still okay to be able to do that, but the new generation, if we're going to truly foster these people, they have to have a sense of involvement as to what's going on.
Yeah, and I have a question there because I think it's a really fine balance, because I always think about, you know, if I talk to, you know, my parents are classic boomers, you know, like my dad's a no BS kind of guy. And so I've kind of grown up really being able to have conversations. I was always the 6-year-old who could talk to like an adult. I've always been kind of like the 20 going on 40, if you will. But at the same time, I'm the millennial. So, but my question is, you know, if I talk to my dad about, like, he is like the definition of the macho mental toughness. But I question if I bring up things about, like, you know, there's this whole aspect of talking about your feelings now and doing all these things that, like, if I bring something up of like these intricacies and all the data that's out there, even raising a child, it's like back then you just kept the child alive and made sure they ate. Like, there was not all these like different things. So I guess what my question is like, I'm a little concerned about all this information overload and all of these things of like, we can't just show up and have a conversation because someone could get offended and all this jazz. But I guess it's like, what's that happy compromise moving forward? Because I feel like we have to still meet in the middle. We can't, if we go completely over to this spectrum, like, I feel like we're going to lose our boots a little, right? Like, how can we bring like the traditional, like, baby boomer mindset? And I think it's really going to come down to corporations now, like, because it's the one place that we have all 4 generations to shape our future. So I was just curious to kind of get your thoughts on that, since I know we spoke a little bit about that in our pre-interview.
I think for us, it's you focus in on the work, not so much on the personal side of things. I mean, when we say, you know, how's it going? What's, you know, any issues you have today? Again, it's focused around the task that you're doing. So you find a common ground with people. You take the personal sides out of it because you don't want to run into those conflicts, but you show them that you're there to help them do what they're task is, what they're required to do, what they're paid to do. To your point, to say, they still are paid to perform a certain job, but to show that you're willing to help, listen, and learn. Take the personal side out of it. You got issues with your babysitters and things like that. Sorry, that's a little bit of outside of my realm of responsibility to what I can do. But here today, with what you're doing, I can help you. So let's focus in on this and keep it at that professional level, not the personal level. It's a challenge because you always tend to get sucked into all these other the outside noise, as I like to call it. But that's to try to keep it focused in on the work related stuff.
Yeah. And that's the whole aspect is now is like kind of going back to mental fitness, mental toughness, mental health, all that jazz. It's like, I feel like people are somewhat like, since the development of the workforce and all this stuff, I feel like people are just kind of like fiending, not like they want to delve like what happened at what happened at home, but I just feel like there's such a merging of that, like, the worlds are colliding a little bit more now. And it's like, how as an employer, like to your point of like keeping that balance, it's kind of like, okay, flexible workforce is you understand something could be happening with the babysitter that could be affecting the task at hand today. How can we support you in this task at hand and in your job to make sure that like, you can take care of what you need to take care of and then be able to show up to do what you're getting paid for.
Yeah, oh, for sure. It was funny. That was a huge topic discussion yesterday. It's like, especially in manufacturing, we have very limited flexibility because, when the product moves from step A to B to C to D, there's got to be people there to kind of move it along that process. And that's what our customers are counting on. I had a funny discussion yesterday with a gentleman who owns two small hotels here in Las Vegas. And we were talking about, flexible workforce. And he said, everybody says, oh, well, you should be able to have flexible workforce. But he says, when a patron calls and says they need a couple of extra pillows and blankets for their bed, I can't say, well, our house staff is, they're on flexible hours. They won't be in for another 12 hours. We'll get it to you tomorrow sometimes. That's just not going to fly, right? There's that customer service aspect of it as well, too. And so again, and that's where I think having people understand the impact of their role in a corporation or an organization helps them. They also have to be empathetic as well, too. As much as the employers are trying to be empathetic, the employee has to be empathetic to what our needs are, because at the end of the day, we are the ones writing the paycheck, and it's all in the effort to service our customers. So yeah, you're right. It's a fine balance, and that's why we try to get our folks to keep it professional, keep it about the task, keep it about the job. Don't get sucked into the personal side. Otherwise, we'd just become an army of HR people as opposed to managers.
100%. Because I was even thinking, it's like, and also the domino effect. I think what it really comes down to at the end of the day is team and like team building and creating an efficient team. Because then this way, like, let's just say something comes up outside of here, then I'm calling them Joe and Marcia. Joe has something that came up outside, and Marcia, like, and then maybe the next day Marcia does. Well, then maybe Joe can come in for Marcia and Marcia comes in for Joe, where it's not that Joe's slacking and Joe can't make it to work or need to be babysat by Marcia. And then Marcia now needs to like come in at 6 a.m. for no reason because of Joe's not like, I think it comes down to also that as well, because things happen, but it's kind of like, how can we have like the team accountability and communication within all these different generations to keep that train moving?
So we actually have somebody on staff full time that basically all they do is focus in on training, leadership development, team building exercises, because I think it's very important, especially in an organization, people have to understand their individual roles and responsibilities. Right? We have responsibilities outside of work. Well, guess what? We also have responsibilities inside work as well, too. And to your point, the team is counting on you to do your role and part of your responsibility for that particular team. Now, we can offset that a little bit by cross-training and making sure that, if Joe can't make it in today, there's enough other people to kind of keep the cogs going and keep the wheels going. But at the end of the day, I think one of the biggest things now is instilling this personal accountability in people that maybe it's a little bit missing in some of the, I don't know, yeah, I hate to say, the millennials, but I mean, you just see the newer generations have a much lower level of personal accountability than we've had in the past. And maybe that's driven by social media and stuff like that, where unfortunately you can go on Facebook or whatever and type in whatever you want without any repercussions. Because if somebody says something you don't like, you just delete them. That way you don't have to listen to that conversation anymore. Where when it's face to face, that's a whole different, psyche there. So, instilling this personal accountability, personal responsibility, it's also, I think, very critical in helping these generations move through the workforce. Because to your point, and everybody has responsibility, and you've got to do what you have to do for the team.
No, exactly. It comes down to the team, and then communication. It's like how to communicate. I'm sure that, and I love that your company has that, because then it comes down to how do we communicate? I think a lot of people now, where especially at least you're in the office, you have, but for virtual world, that I typically work in, you can hide behind Slack, you can hide behind your phone, you can hide behind email. There's so many things you can hide behind to not have confrontation or communication, which is like the most detrimental, I think, to any sort of, business process or, product, whatever that product may be. Lack of communication can really be detrimental to that.
One of the biggest skills that I've had to pay attention to myself, and I think it's critical in anybody in any sort of leadership role, is being it's a term I've heard, like an intelligent listener, right? So that it's very easy for any of us to try to think over somebody else or talk over somebody else when they start to express, how they're feeling, what their, issues are, blah, blah, blah. And when you just basically say, okay, I've heard enough, just get back to work and just, we're done with this. There has to be some better listening skills that allow people to say, okay, I feel like I've said my piece. We'll do what we think, but so that you're truly hearing what somebody is saying. What somebody's saying on the surface may not be the root issue, what their problem is. And sometimes you have to hear through everything. It is me as a CEO, that was probably one of my biggest things, especially when I sit in like a high level meeting and I get, the managers are each talking about their own particular areas. You have to listen to what they're saying, not just the surface numbers and things like all that fluff, but a lot of times it'll come up as to what the real root of the issue is for them personally. And it's only through proper listening that you can be able to disseminate that information.
Listening is one of the most powerful tools, in my opinion, that you can have in your toolbox. I mean, I think sometimes like people can get either if it's something that they're expressing, but you can get very excited and you're like a couple steps ahead and it's like you're vibing. But if you really truly listen to what someone's saying, like there's so many subliminal hidden messages within what they're saying that you could really extract like what the actual core issue, if it's an issue or matter that is being expressed. And in this world of the noise that we live in, it's sometimes very hard to have that skill. But I think if you can have that skill, and that's the one thing, if we think about like what we can really teach every single different generation is the power of listening. I think then we could really resolve some of these structural or lack of challenges that we have currently, if we can just teach people to listen up, put down their phones, and just be present.
Yeah, no, totally. And again, from just speaking about personal experience, as a, when I became a CEO, there's tons of self-doubt about, what am I doing? Am I doing the right thing? Am I making the right decision? And one of the ways I was able to build up my own mental strength in that is I created a circle of trust where I could ask people and listen to what they had to say and trust, I would seek out people that have had that experience before, or somebody that has a bit of knowledge about that, or people that I trust. Right. And being able to ask them the questions. But if you're going to ask somebody's opinion, you also have to be prepared to listen to their answer. You might not agree with it, but they're going to, you have to listen to their answer and take away from that what what you need. I think it's a skill that it's being lost in today's generation. The ability, listen with empathy and understanding and things like that.
And also, like, we always, I feel like there's a lot of yelling at each other rather than actually listening. It's like, okay, let's take a step back. And I do think, to your point, that is something that is like, it comes down to even just resolving issues, like putting aside like personal stuff. It's like you can actually like think about how to drive the organization forward, and then also being able to listen as a person, listen and understand what that circle of influence is and trust, but also that everyone's coming from their perspectives. So it goes back to your confidence in yourself to know what, like, you're the best person who knows your person and situation, right? So I think that's also something that goes back to our beginning of our conversation around confidence, because I think I haven't really heard that answer before, and it's so, to me it seems now like so obvious, but it's so interesting and I love it. But I would like to kind of wrap up our interview around, like, what advice would you give other company leaders as they look to address mental awareness and wellness in the workplace?
I think more so than ever, it's probably about establishing the right culture in your business. Um, Develop a leadership team that has high emotional intelligence, with that ability to be empathetic without being, and that's a tough one because they have to be able to be empathetic without feeling that they're putting themselves in a position of of weakness, which is a very common thing to see in middle managers. Um, and you don't want them to feel threatened or that their job is diminished because they all of a sudden have to listen to people. You still get that old school. I'm the boss. I'm telling you what to do, and it just doesn't fly anymore. Um, we also, I think what's important is to play to people's strengths, right? Make them feel important, and they're part of the process. They're important. Their task is important. The work they're doing is meaningful. So that they feel good about what they're coming to do every day. One of our things that we're seeing with it's a global issue right now with the labor shortage. Our team is on a mission to start looking at automation, and not automation to replace people. It's automation. It's collaborative robots to work side by side with people, but to take away that that they're doing a meaningless task, and upgrade their skills so that they're doing something more meaningful, and they feel much better about what they're doing. That you're not just sitting here just moving the widget along the line. No, let the robot do that. You're doing something that's more meaningful. You're doing quality control. You're doing this or that, so that it's more impactful to the organization. So that's a big thing that I think organizations need to focus in on. The human resources side of it is so difficult right now. It's just getting an employee. You want to hold on to that employee and keep them. Because it costs so much money to try to recruit and train and things like that. Once you get them in, you want to lock them in. You want to hold on to them, right? The social aspect of businesses, I've certainly learned people look to the company. The company has to have some sort of a social impact in the local community, so that they can feel good about what they're doing and who they're working for. I think is far more important. We've done things with local food banks and things like that, where we'll get a volunteer team to go out. I mean, I think our team a couple of weeks ago packed up like 1,500 meals at the local food bank, and they loved it. And it's awesome. It's not just about promoting the company, but it's about showing the employees that you're willing to take a greater sense of the community. You are part of the community, but let's take that even a step further. You're not just, it's more than just providing jobs. It's also helping those outside your realm of responsibility. And we never have any shortage of people that are willing to volunteer and help do stuff like that. So really, it's taking a different look as a leader, as an employer, as to what your company's role is in the community. And that all helps the employees feel better about what they're doing. Yeah, you're still going to make your widgets and do whatever you're selling and stuff like that. But there's this other social element that's become a really big issue for people these days. You know, and again, from our HR team to our executive leadership team, we get everybody involved with all of these things, so that we lead by example. We get out there, and that helps to drag the employees along as well too.
No, and I love that. I think that's like, it's also just getting outside of like, as we're going to go back to manufacturing, like the line of production, right? Like stepping away and actually really like connecting with the company that you're working for, and like, putting in the time. Like I think the employee-employer relationship, it's such a relationship that's a give and take on both sides. So I think that's a really great example. This is awesome. I mean, I could talk for days about 4 generations in the workforce, but I definitely, don't want to have our audience too extended from a listening standpoint. But do you have anything else before we wrapped up today that you wanted to leave with the audience?
No, I think you're absolutely right about the mental toughness. The mental strength is very critical, especially as we're all coming through this tail end of this pandemic. We've been hobbled up for this, 6 months to 12 months, depending on where we live, and you know, to me, you know, it's about having that strength in yourself to trust your own decisions, trust your instincts. That's the other thing that I think is huge these days. People have forgotten the ability to trust their own instincts because they hear so much noise from everything else. And, oh, let's see what Facebook is saying about this. Don't listen to Facebook. You know what's best for you. You know what's best for what makes you be able to make a decision and sleep at night. So focusing on that mental strength is so critical. Just because you have to, we're inundated with information these days, more so than any other time in our history. That you watch what's happening in the Ukraine. We're getting live feeds from what's happening versus it used to be a couple of days delayed or hours delayed. Now we're seeing it live and watching this terrible event unfold in front of us. And people are just, they don't know how to process all this information. So for me, it's if anything that we can do to help people to develop that mental strength, that mental toughness, just by the little bit of things that they can do at work, then that's a big win for us. And they're going to feel good about working for us. They're going to want to get their friends to come work for us, and that just perpetuates a much better, sense of pride, sense of community, sense of what people are doing. Which I think we lost a little bit of that during the pandemic because we were all so isolated, and we have to get that sense of community back.
Oh,
for everybody.
Yeah, I just like the sense of community back, and just also like, I think then being able to block out the noise too, because then we're not actually, I don't think I paid attention to the news like before the pandemic that much, because I just like didn't want that noise. But now it's like, it's just in front of you all of the time. And it's just, I can't fix the world problems like myself. So it's like, that doesn't mean you can have empathy, but like, we can't fix what's going on around us all the time. So I think that's a great point.
Yeah. As I tell my employees all the time, listen, the best thing I'm going to do for you is that when you come into work, you're going to leave your phone in your locker. You're going to go and work, and you're going to get 3 or 4 hours of mental peace, because you don't have to worry about listening to what's going on.
That sounds fabulous and so meditative. Like I love that. I really love that. If I could just drop my phone in the box and just be like, all right, this.
I wish I had that luxury. I mean, I try to go through and turn off notifications and things like that, especially if I need an hour or two of just my own time to be able to focus in on something and think about something. Get rid of the noise. And give yourself the ability to think for yourself, and think properly about something.
I love that. Well, thank you so much, Tom. This has been so great. I've been looking really forward to this conversation, and it was just everything, I definitely wanted to cover. So I appreciate your time. We have Tom Power. He's the president and CEO and owner at Sunshine Minting in Nevada. Well, you're in Nevada, but also based in Idaho, correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
In Idaho.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Tom, and we will catch you next time.
All right. Thanks, Jen. Appreciate it.
Thank you for tuning into another episode of We Are Everyone. You can subscribe to We Are Everyone on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, and also be sure to visit www.pivotalmoments.org to learn more about the organization. And we also want to hear what mental wellness means to you. So you can follow us on social media, submit your video, and we will catch you next time. Thank you so much.